New presenters have been announced for TCS Live, hockey's premier coaching event taking place August 6th to 8th in Edmonton, Alberta, alongside the Hlinka Gretzky U18 World Championships. Joining us on stage will be Glenn Gulletson, head coach of the Dallas Stars, Steve Spott, assistant coach for the Boston Bruins, and France Jean, goalie coach for the Tampa Bay Lightning. For a full list of presenters, go to thecoachesitelive.com. Last year, over 500 coaches representing 14 countries joined us at the University of Michigan. With a limited capacity for this year's event in Edmonton, TCS Live will sell out. So make sure you take advantage of the savings. If you're already a Coaches Site subscriber, you will automatically save $100 on your ticket to TCS Live. Plus, if you use the code GLASSANDOUT at checkout, you'll save an additional 10%. And we're not done. More presenters will be added to the lineup in the coming weeks, so lock in your ticket today and save. And now, on to the show. What's your icebreaker when you're on the ice with a player for the first time?
Oh, it's inappropriate.
It's inappropriate. Okay, that's okay. Well, bad. That's okay.
It's inappropriate. I don't usually. Yeah, like we usually meet beforehand and talk before we hit the ice. So I can't even think of what an icebreaker would be that I use. Yeah. Do you have one that you use?
That's a great question. So, mine is stolen. And granted, I'm working with players much younger than you right now because I'm coaching my little guy. But have you ever crossed paths with Dr. Jody Carrington?
No.
Okay, so she's up the roads in Olds. She is amazing, and
I've heard incredible things about her.
Yeah, so she's spoken at our event, but she has this thing she calls it the light up moment. And in the hockey coaching or sports coaching version of that is when you're in the dressing room, let's say, or maybe you're on the ice. Whenever you encounter players for the first time that day, you light them up. And it's up to you to decide, Danielle is she's really outgoing and she likes being the center of attention. So when Danielle walks in the room, I'm going to be like, hey, Danielle's here. Danielle, how's your day? But Danielle could also be little, reserved and doesn't like all the attention. So that's maybe more of me, I'm going to go up to her kind of one-on-one and get give her a fist pump and say, hey, it's great to see you today. And I live by that now with the kids. And I find it's it's a good way, even if you're meeting players for the first time, say, hey, what's your name? And it's hey. And so anyway, that's my trick, which is stolen. You're getting ready for the off season, and you're working with a variety of players. But when it comes specifically to the work you do with the Flames and their prospects, what might be an example of something, outside of saying, well, I'm just helping them get better at skating? What might be a specific example to say, hey, here's the type of thing we might work on with the player to sort of maybe elevate a very micro part of their skating game?
Oh, there are so many things, but an example that comes to mind right away would be a big topic is power, getting them to be more explosive, to accelerate quickly. That's a huge thing. It doesn't matter if they're pro or not. It seems to be the common, you got to get faster on your first 3 steps. So that definitely is one of the main focuses for many players.
Can that development happen in a vacuum? And what I mean by that, is it solely on the ice, or is that something where it's a combination of we got to be consulting with a strength and conditioning coach, and there's a variety of inputs that influence that part of their game?
I love that you asked this question. It's a common question we get from the older players, but it applies to younger players too that are ready to get into the gym. There's only so much technique that we can learn and teach on the ice and acquire on the ice. And once that player is technically proficient, we have to get them in the gym if they're not already. It has to go hand in hand. So vice versa, if they're in the gym and working all the time and becoming stronger, more powerful, quicker, that won't immediately transfer on the ice until they actually put the time and effort into going through the repetitions of skating techniques. So players don't realize that they put all these hours into developing their skating and very little time into the gym. And then they wonder, why are they still getting beat on the ice? Well, your technique is great. You're technically as fast as we can get you, but until the body changes, you're not going to see those gains the way you want to.
Let's unpack that, because
Yeah.
last night I'm watching Montreal and Buffalo in game 3. I can't take my eyes off Lane Hudson. And he can skate by just about everybody on the ice, but he's built like an Italian supermodel. And he looks like he's, like a adolescent. Like, how do you explain that when you have a kid like that who clearly has a technique, maybe has a jump, but is there a sort of or is that just, the hand of God touched that kid and just made him kind of special?
Well, it's no different than talking about Mr. Connor McDammit is what he's called in my house. But
Yeah, I bet.
genes, yeah, genetics
Yeah.
has a part to do with
Walking.
it for sure.
Sure.
But I also do think it brings up a really good conversation around the whole understanding between strength and power. Many people think that it's all about being strong. Be a strong skater, be a strong athlete, be a strong player, be strong. Where my focus really ties into, let's be powerful, let's be quick. And players don't always understand the difference between strong and powerful. They often think it's the same thing when in fact it's very different. So with Hudson, he knows how to be quick and light on his feet. He knows how to make ice gains. He knows how to separate. He knows all that because he doesn't have to grind out every push thinking that he has to be strong, long and strong, as we used to say.
Totally.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's interesting because I can recall, this is a while back, but some friends that coached in the NCAA. And obviously one of the benefits of playing down there is you get a lot of time in the gym to develop your body. But a lot of these hockey programs were pulling strength coaches in from the football programs. And I would get feedback from some of these coaches. They're like, yeah, like we're like, it's just like we're learning that it's two different things. Like training for football and training for hockey are two different things. And so like how, when you're in the gym and you talk about power, like what does power look like from a skating perspective?
Yeah. Well, I always like to use the analogy of a squat. So if you're in a squatting position and you have 200 pounds on your bar and your butt is down as low as it can be, you're not necessarily in the strongest position there. But if you come up just a little bit, sitting in a chair type of position, you're now in a stronger position, and some would argue one of the strongest positions. That low position gives you a heck of a lot of strength. But if you imagine that person who's squatting the 200 pounds gets up to, let's call it a 3/4 mark, where it's almost like a hockey stance position and not butt down in that 90-degree angle that everybody talks about, all of a sudden that athlete can pop the weight up into a standing position. So they've gone from this low squatting position where they're very strong, but they're not quite quick. They're strong, not fast. When they come up to that 3/4 mark, all of a sudden they're still strong, but they're now able to add an element of speed. So they can pop
I see.
that
That's a great explanation.
weight up the rest of the way. So the weight, 200 pounds hasn't changed. It stayed exactly the same from the bottom position all the way to the top position. But where the muscles can activate, engage speed or power is in a different position than the low position. So when I say that to players, they understand, oh, like I, as a hockey player, I need to be strong, but I also need to be fast. And there is a
Yeah.
difference, right?
Yeah.
It's, bodybuilders are very strong, track athletes are very fast, and hockey players are kind of a little bit of a mix of that, leaning more towards a track as far as structure of the body
Totally.
and the look of a body. It's lean muscle, it's not bulky muscle. So yes, we need to be strong. We have a lot of external physical pressure put on us, but speed is ultimately taking over in the game, in today's game.
You'd be a good person to maybe touch on the subject. So a couple weeks ago, the episode just came out, but we had Jonathan Siglet, who's actually going to be joining you at TCS Live. He's going to be an on-ice presenter. And so Jonathan works with he doesn't he's the Switzerland of player development, so to speak. So he works with like players across all teams. And, he touched on that. He's like, there's players that he works with that are like, they're established, if not like star NHL players, that they're like, hey, like I turn like 50% worse to my left than to my right. Or they have these deficiencies in their game and they've just been able to sort of hide them. And I'd be curious, like, how many times when you start working with a player, I would imagine that, Craig Conroy or Ryan Husker or some of the Flames organization says, so and so needs to work on this area. But how many times do the players come to you and say, hey, Danielle, like, I got this thing in my game that I haven't been able to figure out. Can you help me solve this?
It happens more than you think. And if
Yeah.
the players don't come to me, then it's obviously somebody in their life. If it's a Flames player, it's me usually saying, okay, I'm noticing, this way
Yeah.
isn't happening and this way is so natural. Um, but without naming names, I do have a player on our current roster who cannot punch turn or punch stop with his right foot still. And it is a hole in his game, and you see it affect certain plays. And it's something that he has to focus on and target this summer because he can't come back without it. I mean, he can come back, but um, we can't. We need him to be as versatile as possible, right? Like we need to make the playoffs, so we need every guy to amp it up a little bit. Meaning they've got to really focus on the weaker side of things.
No, that's fair. And like when it comes to something like a punch turn, and so I was going, there's been a couple profiles on you, and so you could see in action on the ice, but you come from a figure skating background. I would say that, a punch turn, and I feel like it's got a variety of different, terminologies, but that's pretty new to our game, right? Like I like when growing up, like I certainly didn't learn that. I feel like it's almost in the past decade, and now everybody's diving in head first. But can you maybe give an example of like based on your background on how you kind of identify that hey, there's a skating element that can really impact how a player protects and manages the puck, and then how do you sort of work backwards to sort of uncover just the details that go into it, and then obviously how you're going to teach it.
Well, I'm gonna be very honest with you right now. I actually, even though I do come from the figure skating background, um, and as much as I think there is so much value from how I've learned and how I trained, I wouldn't be where I am without it. I have worked consciously to, not mix the 2 in a sense. What I mean by that is I work really hard not to look like a figure skater on the ice, not I work hard at not speaking like a figure skater, so I really consciously, use terminology that figure skaters would not use. It's more hockey based, what you would hear in a locker room or a hockey seminar or, just around a bunch of coaches sitting around and having a beer. Like, I really have tapped into getting away from figure skating terminology and actual figure skating used skills. So when
Yeah.
you talk about punch turns, when those came to play, they evolved naturally from players not being able to be deceptive enough. All of a sudden
Yeah.
these punch turns started to show up in it. And when you see it in the game, that's I just saw a player and I can't even recall who it was. But you're right, like a decade ago, do something like that just by instinct, just by
Yeah.
accident. And it was deceptive. It was evasive and shifty. And I thought there is something to this. And punch turns were around by then. It's not that I've created it or anything like that, but I recognized through hockey, not figure skating, that this was a valuable skill and that every single player needs it in their repertoire. And if they don't have it, they're behind the 8 ball because it is so used to the point now where punch turns are starting to become predictable. So it's even evolving into other skills like what I would call a double slide or sliding on 2 feet, almost like delaying, do a shoulder check, and then you quickly evade out the other way. That it's evolution, right? It's natural to happen in life and especially in sport, but it's certainly happening with punch turns turning into a punch reverse where they punch one way and reverse the other way, or a double punch where they seem like they're doing multiple punches and nobody can tell where their butt's going. And, it really
Sounds
spins
like a dance
into
recital. Sounds like we're doing a dance recital now.
yeah, like, dude, it really can like spin into so many different things. So it wasn't from the skating world, the figure skating world, that I recognized that that was a valuable skill. It actually was from just watching the game and watching what was unfolding and transpiring over time.
Well, you know what? I don't know if this is historically accurate, but I can remember, and I've seen this clip come up a ton. It's come up in some of the presentations that people have done at our events, but it's a clip, and I want to say it's 2007 or 2008. It's the playoffs, and it's Sidney Crosby. Pittsburgh's playing Ottawa. I'm pretty sure it's Steven Spezza that's covering him down low, and he protects the puck, and he's behind the net, and he cuts back like 4 or 5 times and eventually dishes it to Letang for a one-timer. They score. But like that clip, I can remember clear as like that got circulated so fast, and people are like, watch what he's doing here with his feet. Watch, like, and everybody was like, you'd see Wayne Gretzky do these like wide sort of turns and a cutback, but nothing like that. And that just seemed to like open everybody's eyes to what was possible. But like, you just talked about how, and this is the nature of our game, right? Like somebody unlocks something and then people build on it and it ladders up. How much, looking at, knowing that the hands can only do what the feet allow, and the eyes and brain can only see what the feet allow. How much more room is there to, maybe enhance or evolve a player's skating ability to, impact their overall game?
I would love to say, we're near the peak, but every
Yeah.
time I say that, somebody proves me wrong. Like there's something else. There's something else. There's something else.
Yeah.
Um, and I think the ceiling way of viewing things is we are near the peak of it, but ultimately there's there's going to be creativity as a part of coaching. I mean, that's who we are as coaches. We're very creative. We adapt to different things, and as skills change and progress, our creativity is going to continue, and we're going to come up with different ways of evading somebody or turning or whatnot. But I mean, it's hard to imagine different skills being created when there's really only so much you can do with positioning of your feet and your blade and angles and things like that. So I would like to think it's there's endless possibilities for improvement and change, but I'm curious to see what actually happens.
Yeah, I mean, I look at, through the lens of maybe like roster formation, where for example, like
Oh,
with
that's
defensemen, it used to be
interesting.
you had to be just like really big, and as long as you get the puck off the glass and out, you can hang. And now you see these kids like Quinn Hughes and Lane Hudson and Kale McCarr, and you're like, gosh. And then you're like, well, what happens when you've got 6 of those on the ice at the same time? Like, what happens when development catches up and there's more kids that can do this? And like, how is that going to, shape the chemistry or physics of the game? And so I do sense that there's the ceilings maybe a little further ahead than we think, just based on more players being. I feel it takes a couple generations for more players to kind of have these skills or acquire them when they're younger. You mentioned your language, and not speaking in figure skating terms. Just watching some of the clips of you that are available in action on the ice, going through your website, I sense that your language is really intentional, and it's not so much about a figure skating versus hockey language. It's about meeting people where they are. And coaching is so much about, it's not what you say, it's what people hear. And if you're saying things that people don't digest or they can't relate to, then it really doesn't matter how smart you are. um, when you're breaking down these complex skills, like, how have you gone about formulating, like, what is the best language, or how to best communicate some of these the complexities, and make them sound simple?
You know, there's a lot of trial and error in it for
Yeah.
sure, and I'm old, so I've been around a long time, so I've had lots of practice at
Right. I'm old too.
finding
Yeah.
finding what works and
Yeah.
what doesn't work, but when I find something that really clicks, when I see
Yeah.
players' eyes just open that little extra, like, and that light bulb, it's gone off and they're so excited to go try what I've just said, you've touched on something and you need to hang on to that, put it in your pocket to be used next time. Now, I'm a firm believer everybody learns differently. I'll say preach this all the time, especially to younger players and players that lack confidence. And that could be a pro, that could be a U11. But anybody who lacks confidence, I really push them to understand that learning takes time and they need to be patient with it. And so, with that, they have to have the guts to say to me when I say something they don't understand. So, if I'm talking a completely foreign language to them, I'm speaking English, but it's not landing, they have to be able to say to me, "Hey, coach, like, I don't get it." And I'll say right away, like, "Holy crap, man, I'm so sorry. Like, let me say it a different way. Let me show it to you. Let me draw it. Let me do something different so that whatever I'm saying or how I'm teaching it connects with that person's way of learning." Because nothing is more frustrating than having, I mean, it happened in school to me, teachers who said things one way and stuck with that
Yeah.
way, and it never helped me. I could never get the concept. And when I couldn't get the concept, they would get frustrated with me, thinking, one, she's not listening, or two, she's dumb, right? It was like one or the other. Well, I'm not either.
Yeah.
I'm listening, and there's some subjects that I don't excel in, but some I'm fine in, and it's just going to take somebody who has the patience to say it a different way to me. And so I've taken that into the coaching world. Coaches who keep saying things the same way over and over and over again, getting frustrated with the player because they think they're not listening or they're just not smart enough to get it, better check themselves. They need to step back and understand it is our responsibility as the leader,
Totally.
as the coach, to change how we're saying things, how we communicate to these players so that they can actually have the opportunity to learn. So it takes a different way of communicating. It takes um, flexible thinking, creativity, adaptability. It takes drawing things on the ice. It just takes a different way. And some coaches get really stubborn in the way that they do things because it takes a lot of energy to be the other way, to be that adaptable, creative type of coach. But when players feel safe to make mistakes, they feel safe to try things, then you all of a sudden recognize that, okay, you're not quite hitting it. This is what you need to do, or, whatever the case may be, they start to learn a lot better.
I tell coaches all the time, like, it's in the same way that a comic, like, they don't just get on stage and do their Netflix special. Like, they're trying that material on for a long time, going to small clubs, trying it out. I'm like, that's the exercise that you should be going through, is try, even if you think you have it right, maybe try it a different way, try the delivery, and see if you can engage people. And I think like an unreal example of that. Do you know who Pep Guardiola is?
No.
So he's a football soccer. He's probably the best manager in soccer right now. He's with Man City. Um, like, makes like $35 million a year. He's Spanish, was a great player. But, like, in saying all that, you go watch him, like his pregame talks, or, like, when he's addressing his team, he's a circus performer. And I'm like, that's,
I
if you
love
go and
that.
have like a beer with Pep, like, that's probably not who's showing up, but it's like, clearly this guy dealing with, again, players that are the alphas and making all kinds of money, and can tune him out too. Like, he's obviously discovered over time that this is the best way to get them engaged. Even though I'm sure he's got buddies in the managerial coaching profession that see some of these clips and be like, "What are you doing?"
It's
But he
true.
wins. But he wins.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, and I'll speak to that because a lot of my players, they laugh because I use a lot of analogies when I'm teaching, and I use a lot of rhymes. Like, I try to rhyme everything. Um, you think back to when we were in preschool or kindergarten, they learn by rhymes, right? Like nursery rhymes and da 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 da. So I love to rhyme. And sometimes it just comes out by mistake. And I giggle at myself and give myself a pat on the back because, hey, I did it again. Didn't even know it. And so, the analogies, though, I find with the rhyming, they really tie in together that whole ease of learning and engagement and the fun. And, oh, it's not boring, it's not dry, because we all know learning skating technique isn't always the most fun that you can have on the ice. And so, the more you can tie in different real life analogies, or sometimes in my case, an inappropriate comment here and there with the older guys, it happens, but they end up really like, oh my gosh, like, I can't believe she said that. This is great. Like, they,
Yeah,
for whatever reason, they buy into the next thing I'm about to say. It builds fun, can oftentimes build a level of trust and safety for players. They know
100%.
that, I'm
100%.
not stuffy, and
Yeah.
we can play around a little bit, and learning is supposed to be fun. This game is supposed to be fun. Development is supposed to be fun.
Well, you know what? I mean, you use the analogy that it's like, like rhyming when you're a kid and you learn. But I would say, even as adults, like I'm not always great with names, but I know some people that are great at remembering people's names, and I'm always like, how do you do that? And it's always like it's generally the hack is, as soon as I meet them, I make a rhyme. Meaning, I meet Danielle Fujita for the first time, and it's like Danielle likes seashells or something like that. Was
Yeah,
that a
yeah.
rhyme? Maybe
Yeah,
that's probably
sorta.
I can't rhyme properly.
Close enough,
But
close enough.
yeah, but it's like it's just like it's at the end of the day, if it works, it works.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for that. You mentioned patience, and I think patience is one of those terms that it can mean a lot of different things to different people. However, if you don't have the same definition, it can be problematic. And an example of that would be we work with a gentleman, Ryan Blank. He's been on the show. He's spoken at our events. And Ryan's role is he works with predominantly in the NFL, but with leaders and within organizations on their leadership and communication. And he uses this example, and I won't say the team, but one of the teams he had been working with drafted a quarterback like really, really high. And so the owner of the team goes to the coach and says, "Hey, when do you think so and so is going to be ready to start for us?" And the coach goes out of his way to say, "Hey, Mr. So and so, we got to be really patient with this guy. Like, it's not going to be right away. We need to be really, really patient with this player and let them develop." Owner's like, "Okay, great, got it." So then they kind of find out later that like the owner goes to his buddies at the country club and is saying, "Hey, we're going to have to be patient with so and so. Like, he's probably not going to be ready like in mini camp, but he'll be ready for the start of the season. We just got to be patient until the start of the season." Like the coach was thinking like maybe in 2 years he starts a game for us. And so when you talk about patience in the form of development, like what does patience mean?
Patience, it's probably one of the main key foundations of my coaching, and to me, it means a number of different things, but mostly, allowing a player to have the time that he or she needs, or they need, to develop however they need to. So, in other words, I see coaches oftentimes will run drills, and patience to them means, okay, well, this kid is going through the drill and he's making a mistake. I'm just going to zip my mouth and let him go through the drill a few times. And that's patient. Um, right. For me, it is if I'm running a drill, focusing on one specific skating technique, say it's a tight turn, and I see that player make a mistake on the tight turn, I will pull that player right away and say, okay, whatever teaching cue I want to use, give it to him or them, make sure that they understand it. If they don't understand it, I have the patience to continue teaching whatever I need to teach until I see just a minuscule of of progress. Then allow him to go back into that drill, give it a try. Patience also means get the kids to slow down. And I say kids, but I mean, my boys on my Flames team, I call them my boys too. They're all kids. When you get to this age, everybody's a kid. So really, I think that saying, this is what I say, saying to them, slow things down so you can speed them up really hits home for them. They sometimes look at me confused, like, slow things down to speed things up. That's counterintuitive. That's a bit of a hypocritical statement. But slowing things down gives them permission to slow things down. Walk through the movement pattern that you're trying to reinforce. Allow yourself to feel it and then think it and then feel and think together. And eventually, all of a sudden, they catapult forwards and can do it with speed with very little time in between. Does that make sense? So, yeah, it's just a matter of, if a kid's going through the drill and struggling, give them that permission, slow it down. But also for me as a coach, say, please, be willing to screw up, make a mistake. Could you imagine if I came out here and everybody was perfect? I'd have nothing to say. I mean, I'm getting paid for nothing. Like, this is terrible.
Yeah.
Some people that might be good. I'd be bored out of my mind though. So, it's a number of things. It's making sure the kid feels safe, that they are allowed, they have permission to take their time, make mistakes, fall down, do whatever they need to do to recognize the errors are happening, and then take those teaching cues, provide them to them in a very patient way. Maybe you can only provide half a cue. Maybe you can give them a full sentence of cues, but everybody's individual. And so you really have to be able to work with the level that you're being shown by that player.
And I would guess, and this would apply to all facets of the game, like team systems, et cetera. But I think specifically with skating is that, the amount of reps and environments to work on a different skill. So, what I mean by that is, you talk about, we'll use punch turns or jab turns, and just because we've talked about it, but I would imagine it's a thing where you might just work on, there was, oh man, who are you? You was a video of you working with, and I'm going to steal it. Clearly, I'm a big
Steal
stealer.
away. That's what coaching is, right? We
I'm trying to
borrow
do it
from
with
each
my
other.
kids, but there's this video of you on the ice with an NHL player, and you're just really simple. They're taking two little light strides and then turn. Two little light strides, jab, like just not even turn, like they're on their outside edge. So just getting on their edge. And then so the next progression is probably like, can you go like half speed, and then can you actually turn that into a turn? And then can you add a crossover? And then, oh, hey, now the puck's going to be on your stick. And how does that influence things with your hand mechanics, et cetera? So point being, like, unless you want to spend 10 hours on the ice in one session, the patience is going to be, this is going to take multiple touch points to actually build up this skill to a point where you can actually use it in a game, instinctually.
100%. I know who you're talking about when you say that, and that's another example of a player not being able to do a punch turn. The interesting thing when you brought up, my figure skating background, the most valuable thing I learned growing up as a figure skater and then becoming a figure skating coach, and then turning into an instructor, a facilitator for Skate Canada. When I was teaching coaches how to teach, the biggest thing that impacted them and impacted me as a skater was learning what progressions were. Progressions, it's not that it doesn't happen in the hockey world, but it's absolutely pushed in the figure skating world. We don't learn our skills without progressions, and a progression is simply breaking down a skill into the tiniest little increments. All those books of golf for dummies, or, how to, or what, those dummy books. It's dumbing down a skill to the most basic level. Teach that first, then add on the layer and add on the next layer and add on the next layer. And before you know it, you have the full skill. So progressions is, I would encourage every coach out there, if you can learn how to break a skill down, you have the magic.
Yeah, and I would say like, it's really you talking about like, keeping notes of language. Like I think it's really important for like coaches and I mean, I'll tell you what, by and large, like um the NHL coaches that we've had on this show where we get to dive into it and it happens organically, like almost every one of them references a journal of some kind where they keep notes. A lot of those notes are like, hey, like I thought of a detail or a mechanic or something, and they're just constantly breaking these things down in their own brains. But they're like, I got to write it down, otherwise it'll disappear. So it's really important. Um, in your bio on your website, and I'm paraphrasing here, but you draw a distinction between I'm a good teacher, like I don't tell people what to do. And
Oh.
I hear from like this is like probably my biggest pet peeve, and part of it's probably because I probably used to do it and I cringe at it. But I'm talking to somebody about a player, and it's like I don't know what their problem is. I told them what to do. I told them how to do it. And I don't know. And so clearly, there's something wrong with the play. Like we just totally passed accountability to the player because we told them. What's your distinction between telling and teaching?
You hit it on the telling. It's just recognizing something that needs to be done and telling them
Yeah.
to do it. So, you see a basketball player take a three-point shot and misses, and you go tell him, well, you need to jump higher. Okay, well, thank you.
Yeah,
A
exactly.
player's in a tight space and he gets stripped of the puck. Okay, you need to move faster. Oh, great, thanks. I mean, at no point do those athletes ever hear the how do I do it and the why. So those are the two facets that I really push with every player is if you don't understand the how and the why, then you're not going to improve. The development's not going to be, you might develop a little bit, but it's not going to be the gains that you're wanting. So teaching, truly teaching, and with figure skating, it's obvious it's so technical, and the technical side of skating and hockey is the same. It's very technical, so there unfortunately can be a lot of talking and breaking down skills, but without that teaching component, and that does mean standing still and not racing around the rink sometimes, and the optics uh, can sometimes be misconstrued like, oh my gosh, they're standing still, they're wasting time. But standing still and actually learning the how to do a skill again speeds up development. It's slowing it down to speed it up.
Yeah.
That
Love
to
that.
me, yeah, telling it's very frustrating. I can understand why you would be frustrated, and I used to do the same thing when I first started
Totally.
coaching. It's really, I mean, we learn from the people that taught us, and again, evolution. We've gotten smarter in our old age,
A
and
lot of
we now
telling back in
understand.
the day. A lot of
Yeah,
telling.
yes, a lot of telling, a lot, and now teaching. It's just be able to explain what you're seeing and how to change. What is it exactly you want that, what is it that you want changed? For coaches, I'll say the quickest way to give the teaching side of things is find the body part that's making a mistake and give it an action. So if you have little guys that keep dropping their head up, body part, action. If you have kids that aren't fully lengthening their legs, and their knee keeps poking out, straighten your leg. So you have the body part of the leg and the action that you want it to take. I mean, we can go on and on. It's body part action, body part action.
I wrote that. That's great. Um, if you and I go to a game together, we go to the Saddle Dome. Um,
Let's do
when the
that.
game, I gotta be so I gotta be careful the Saddle Dome because do you know Ryan Pinder?
Yes.
Okay, so Ryan's one of my best pals, and
Okay.
so Ryan calls them heroin beers. And his theory for the heroin beers is that the pipes haven't been cleaned from the beer taps in the Saddle Dome for so long. If you have too many, like all of a sudden the game gets real fuzzy real fast. So you got to be careful. Everybody, I'm in the Saddle Dome. Be careful of the Saddle Dome. You got one year left. But if we went to the Saddle Dome and we're watching a Flames game, like where do your eyes go when the game's in action? Like you talk about like body parts mechanics? What are you looking at?
Oh, the skating coach in me takes over usually, and then I
Yeah.
have to consciously tell myself, okay, enjoy the game, like watch it as a whole. So when a player, when a game's transpiring in front of me, I usually pick out a player and watch their movements, and I see, a combination of skating skills linked together, and I'm critiquing every skating skill as he goes until the shift's done. That's truthfully what I end up doing. I think partly because it's my job and I need to know what my players are doing. And if things are showing up that shouldn't be, I need to be able to communicate that with those players. But uh, honestly, I think it's just the way I've learned. It's how my mind works, and that comes from the figure skating side of it. And I did play hockey, but I wasn't very good at it. Offside and myself just we did not seem to align with our beliefs, and I just wanted to skate fast. So I don't know why the blue line even mattered. But so being on the ice playing the sport is very different than to me, overlooking and seeing the game. What I've learned to do over the years, though, is start to watch more of the positional play. And I start to watch, how are my players getting into the spots that are being asked of them to get to? I've, in the last probably 3 to 5 years, I really started to do that more when Daryl Sutter came to the Flames, came back. That's when it started to become a priority to me to really look at that side of it. So it's still a work in progress. I don't do it all the time. I have to, remind myself, oh, stop looking at their feet, watch the body,
Yeah.
watch the position, watch the overall play.
So, you mentioned Daryl coming back, and I think for a lot of folks, you hear Daryl in a press conference, or him speak, the perception might be like, oh, he's really old school. I mean, and we've had a lot of folks that have come on this show that have coached with Daryl, and in some cases played for him. They're like that's not who he is. Like, this is a hyper intelligent guy that thinks deeply about the game. Um, but whether it's Daryl, whether it's Ryan or any of the current coaches, how much collaboration is there to say, hey, like, what, today we're going to work on D retrievals. And so, there's a certain, maybe a specific footwork that's required for that. Or, hey, we're going to work on the forecheck and we need to think about like our edge work in terms of pursuing pucks. Like, what's the give and take or collaboration that happens with the Flame staff, or and maybe in some cases their development staff?
Yeah, you know what? And it's not just the Flame staff. I'll have this type of conversation with all coaches at all levels that I have a relationship with. If I'm working with a team, they'll come to me and say, "Okay, this is what's happening," or sometimes they'll send me clips, which I absolutely love receiving. I'll watch video all day just to be able to break things down. Um, and when they show me something deficient that's happening, I can usually pinpoint where it's happening. Say it's there's a player that is struggling to win battles. I will ask, okay, send me some clips of the battles that they're losing. And I'll look and I can usually tell, okay, it's footwork. If they're coming to me as a skating coach, they also suspect that, okay, well, we've talked to him about position, we've talked to him about stick placement, we've talked to him about, body placement. All of it's been spoken about, but there's still something missing. Um, I can usually see the footwork that's missing and target that with the players or a player. So there's a lot of collaboration that does happen with all teams, but specifically with the Flames, I work with the AHL team and the NHL team. So I think it's part of my job just to make sure that if we're struggling in certain areas to be open to giving that feedback when it's needed. Players will also reach out. I'll have a lot of text messages from certain players, the NHL players, especially, that'll be like, okay, I didn't feel right last night. Did you see anything? And
Interesting.
I'll quickly text back and say, yeah, not so good. Or, oh yeah, I didn't see that. You're good. It's maybe just a fatigue thing. But I try very hard to keep that line of communication open, both with the coaching staff and the players as well.
You mentioned the fatigue part. Um, Gosh, I know the NHL is talking about adding games next year. Like, I wish I was in a position of influence. Like, we play less games, less games, less games. But, just with, I mean, the odometer that's on these players, how important now is, I guess, skating mechanics to ensuring that players are, they still have legs at this time of the year when the stakes are really high. And from just a purely, I guess, mechanical standpoint, like what are some of the, I guess maybe what are some of the things that enhance skating efficiency, or perhaps the other way to look at it is what are some of the things that really can, um, burn a player out from a skating perspective?
To keep this type of schedule going, it's all about off ice. Are you sleeping? What are your sleeping habits? Are you even sleeping? It's sleeping, eating, it's what you're doing in the gym. It's, how well you take care of yourself. It's, the pros have to be pros, and they're pros for a reason because they have that mentality. And for those that can't um, grasp what's needed at that level, don't last long in the NHL. So it's taxing on the body, it's taxing on the mind. There isn't anything skating specific that can help them through an 82 and 84 game season, um, other than efficiency. But I mean, that's needed at any level, no matter the number of games that they're playing.
Yeah, and I guess what I mean, like if it was baseball, for example, like there's been a lot made of like the release point of the baseball, right? For pitchers specifically, because if it's like maybe the degrees off, it wrecks the pitcher's shoulder. Eventually it's going to, or perhaps their elbow, or they need Tommy John surgery. And I just look at the skating mechanics. Like I think that's one thing that the more I think probably from working with kids, I think everybody should like work with kids because man, you learn so much that influences how you look at the game at the highest levels. But it amazes me, like in the NHL, like how differently everybody skates. You know what I mean? But I'm like within that spectrum, there must be some like ways that are like, hey, we rather you look like this than this because this way is gonna, your groins are gonna blow out by Christmas.
Yeah, you've really touched on something that is, I don't know if I can term it as a debate, although I think it's still very actively debated. But it's been proven so much now, and research has been done on it. This whole lengthen your stride, get it long. Um, it's starting to become, I'll say, less important, but it's maybe less important is the wrong phrase. Let me say less utilized in the game than one would think. So it's not that we want stride to be choppy and rough and heavy. It's getting into this whole idea of power and acceleration. It happens from quick turnover rate, quick frequency of the feet. And when you
Yeah,
have quick frequency, you don't have the time or the ability, the physical ability to extend through all of your
totally.
joints fully, right? I always say this, like, I always say, again, here we go to the analogies, take a basketball player that I mentioned earlier doing a 3-point shot versus a quick layup. In a 3-point shot, they fully extend, they take their time, and the ball goes a distance. In a quick layup, they don't have to fully extend and the ball still moves. It's still in the hoop. In golf, it's driving the ball versus chipping the ball. In boxing, it's a full punch versus a quick jab. In tennis, it's a big serve versus a quick return. Like, we're talking about all these different dynamics
Another tool.
of right extension and not so much extension. And every sport that you can think of, I have not been able to come up with one sport that exists where they don't strategize when and where to use which type of lengthened joints. And yet we look at hockey, and the old way of thinking was lengthen on everything. That means push the strongest and longest you can. Well, that doesn't make sense, especially to today's game. It's way too fast, it's way too dynamic. Getting quick out of tight spaces, you're not gonna stride out of that area. You're gonna move your feet at a very fast rate, therefore, you don't have time to fully extend. That's where the power, where you're still creating force at a very fast rate. That's what's happening, right? That whole, you're at the top third position of a squat and you can power up dynamically, you can burst up. The same thing out of any tight space or on a quick start, you need to move the feet really quick with force, but really quick. And if you're busy thinking about grinding out and lengthening every push, you're now tearing your labrum, pulling your groin, creating a hernia. I mean, wear and tear, it's terrible hip health when you think about it.
Well, I think the other one, just as you're saying all that, comes to mind. Like I can remember, when you were sort of like either taught how to skate or when you were taught how to teach people how to skate, it was always like you have to recover all the way back to underneath your hip. And that appears to me to be like in your world, like another sort of debate. It's like maybe they don't have to come right back. They can be kind of wide track skaters. And another Calgary guy, Dr. Bracco, Mike
Yes.
Bracco, who's in Calgary. Like he did a thing for us years ago, and I remember when he did it, like people were looking at him like he had three eyes. But he did an analysis of recovery, and he's like, "Look at Connor McDavid." I think he specifically was using clips from the skills competition and players like the fastest skater, and saying, "Look, guys, like these are the presumably the best skaters in the world." And they're not recovering all the way. And so I think the lesson there is, it's really important for us on a somewhat cyclical nature to question what we've maybe been taught or what's been sort of a rule of thumb and say, have we learned something new that gives us some better information and to make a better decision?
Yeah, and when I'm talking specifically about stride, it's for me, it's all about ice gains, in my opinion, like how much ice can we gain for every push that we do? And so this whole idea of bringing your feet back together and touching, one, you're going to end up on the wrong edge. Two, you stall, what I call
Wrong edge.
stall.
That's a great point. Yeah, I never thought.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
you pause your movement. Well, I don't want my players pausing. Like the last thing I want is to put my vehicle in neutral when I'm trying to go fast. Another analogy. So it's like I want the foot on the gas the whole time. And so when my guys bring their legs for recovery, not only do they not bring their feet touching, they don't stop their foot side by side, the other foot. It is a follow through. So follow through and then push. So it's a constant switching action. It's not a pause, push, push. It's follow through. Just, again, any sport, follow through will make the movement continuous.
Probably in the same way that you don't pause when you run, because that would be awkward and
Wouldn't
slow you
that be
down.
weird?
You'd
I
be standing
know,
still.
hey?
You'd be no
That's
choice.
right.
You'd have to stand still. Danielle, when you mentioned earlier about like at some point you're like, I'm going to be a hockey coach. When did you decide you wanted to be a hockey coach?
Well, truth be told, I would have been a hockey coach before a figure skating coach if I was better at hockey, but I wasn't. So I left that for my brother. I mean, I grew up around a brother who played high level hockey, played pro overseas for 15, 16 years. And he is the reason why I fell in love with this sport. He was a quick, shifty, very small player, but oh my gosh, he was so fun to watch. And he was a point guy. So that was even more fun, right? Cheering for him all the time when he got point after point. But because I wasn't good at hockey, I naturally I basically put myself in a one lane, and I didn't allow myself to dream of going at any other direction until I realized that I had a knack for teaching hockey players. One, because I loved the game and could speak the game. And could I pass and shoot? No, still terrible at it. But I could really talk hockey with them, and it gained some street cred, let's say, with them, and it just transpired from there. So although I was young wanting to be just a coach, hockey specifically, I didn't open myself up to dreaming that dream until I was older and realized that teaching power skating was kind of a thing I was good at.
Holy cow, your brother put up some serious numbers in the Western League.
He did. I know,
Yeah,
crazy, right? Five
yeah,
foot
and
seven. I think his stats say he's 5'8", but truth be told, I think he's more 5'7".
well,
Yeah.
it's I spent good run over in China and Asia, working on grassroots hockey over there. So saw a handful of games in the pro league, the Asian Pro League, and it's and got to know some of the players. But like unbelievable life experience to get to go hang over there and
Incredible.
play hockey. Yeah, unreal. One of the reasons I asked about how you made that transition, my understanding is that you set a goal and maybe manifested this to life, and maybe it wasn't so much to be a hockey skating coach, but specifically to be in the National Hockey League. And I was so inspired by reading that, because, and I think the way that you sort of articulated too, like, it was another thing I'm going to clip because just to have on hand for players, because I'm like, it really just, it goes to show you that, we get to choose what we focus our thoughts on. And if we focus on the right things, we can get a lot done. And can you just maybe elaborate?
Sure. It's been so many years now. It's all meshing into one, but I think it was 8 months almost to the date. I want to say 8 or 9 months to the date of deciding that I wanted to work in the NHL, that I received my Flames tracksuit for the very first time.
That's
And
awesome.
so the way that that all came to be is, um, teaching figure skating at a high level wasn't enough for me. I wanted more, and I wanted it in the hockey world. And I knew the highest level you could go to was the NHL. So I happened to know somebody that could get me Craig Conroy's phone number. So I got a hold of Craig Conroy's phone number, and I probably hung on to it for months, just not having the guts to reach out. And I am not a intimidated kind of person, but for whatever reason, I think it was the fear of rejection, like asking a guy out on a date. I just did not want to get the no. So
Did
yeah.
you did when he picked up the phone? Did you say hi, Craig, or did you say hi, Mr. Conroy?
Oh, I texted. I did the chicken thing. I did the,
Text, okay.
"Hey, Craig." We
Yeah.
had met before. Like, I taught figure skating in the same club that his girls, skated at, so he had seen me on the ice, and we had said hi, here and there. But there was a part of me that really didn't wanna overstep and, you
Yeah.
know, take that kind of interaction. Um, I didn't want to take advantage of it. So anyway, months go on, and I finally get the guts to reach out to him, and I do it by text. And hey, Craig, would you happen to have 5 minutes to talk one day at the rink? And he immediately responded. He's like, yeah, absolutely. Like, I'll let you know when I'm there next. And so, sure enough, I did not expect to hear from him at all. I thought that was, a good blow off. I'm like, that's smart. He'll reach out to me. I'll never hear from the guy again. But then he did reach out. He said, hey, I'm at Winsport. If you're around, pop by. And with me living only 5 minutes away from Winsport, I said, I'm there. And so went over there, sat down with him. 5 minutes turned into 45 minutes. And I just asked him, ideas of what he thought about my idea of, how can I get work in the NHL? Where do I start? Like, what are the first steps? What does this look like? And he knew from my coaching, he had faith in me. He said, Danielle, you're very good at what you do. It wouldn't take long. Just get involved with some players, get your name out there a little bit more in the hockey world, and see what happens. And a little bit of backstory is I was living in BC for a number of years before moving back to Calgary. So I had built my hockey business out in BC, but to people in Alberta, I was fairly new, even though I had been
Yeah.
doing it for a long time. So fast forward, I had worked with a few players. He had a conversation with Kent Kabelka, our head of training.
Yeah.
Um, he's our head trainer with the Flames, and I worked with his son, and his son struggled with skating quite a bit, and just because of the son, his name's Chris. Chris's work ethic by far is what catapulted his figure skating to improve as much as it did. Kent sees this. Then all of a sudden, Craig's like, okay, can you get Danielle to work with so and so and so and so? And it ended up being the vets. And I'm working through the summer with these vets. And through all of this, I am, no joke, every night visualizing receiving a tracksuit, visualizing pulling it
That
on,
specific that specific event.
zipping.
No
Oh, yeah.
way.
Oh yeah,
Really?
every night and in detail. Like I knew the color of the tracksuit, I knew where I was when I received that tracksuit, and then the added thing to it that my kids, they don't want to ever hear the song again. But I used to play this song by Great Big Sea, "Ordinary Day," every morning to pump me up to take one step closer to this goal of working in the NHL. Like, no joke. I did this for 8, 9 months straight. And so it was always the last thing I thought about. And then playing the song as soon as I woke up, it was the first thing that I was intentionally working towards. So as it goes on, I work with the vets in the summer, and the Flames had a skating coach at the time, so I knew that I until that contract was expired, I would never have an opportunity to even, um, vet for that. But as it turned out, I ended up getting more and more work with Flames guys, other NHL guys in Calgary, and my reputation kind of started to flourish, which I was so excited about, and the rest is history.
Thank you for sharing. That's amazing, and I love the detail about the song. My best friend, when he did his PhD and he was prepping for his dissertation in neuroscience, his was Katy Perry's "Fireworks," and we remember like one time me and we were going to his house and we were like somebody's really blasting that song, and I'm like, oh my god, it's like Justin's apartment. What is going on in here? He's like, guys, I don't give a shit. I'm getting ready for a big life event, and this is doing it for me. So we're leaning
We're
in.
doing it.
Well, I think you know what I think partly too. I asked because just recently, a young guy who I used to coach went on to get his master's in sports psychology, and he's just recently graduated. He's carving out a career for himself, and he called me up and he's like, "Hey, I'm going to these clubs and these associations, and nobody's buying in." I'm like, "Hey, you gotta show them the value that you're going to bring. You have to help them connect the dots between I'm going to bring this to the table, and here's the results you're going to get on the other side. It can't just be like, hey, look at how great I am. Like you've got to understand that you're in this world every day. You're in the skating world every day. You got to say, hey, this is how this can drive performance, because at the end of the day, this is a results orientated business. So I think, thank you for sharing. It's a great lesson for all of us. Um, you know, as have navigated your career, like how much has changed? Is there anything else that you would point to say that, hey, like this from a technical aspect is really different today than maybe it was a decade ago?
Other than our conversation we had around stride,
Yeah.
because that's a big one. I mean, when I first started teaching, it was all about lengthening the stride, and everything you did was lengthen. But um, I think versatility is a big factor. It's the players that are the most versatile that seem to have that extra edge above other players. Um, it's not. Let's take forwards, for example, and I always loved to tease them because, I mean, I was a forward, but I was also a figure skater, so I could skate backwards. But a lot of my forwards that I work with, they cringe when we have to turn around and skate backwards. It's almost that, that narrow-mindedness of, okay, forwards only skate forwards and D skate backwards, where we well know that the game is nothing like that anymore. So, you need to be able to do basically interchange the positions. You might be a listed forward, but you better well know all the skating skills and positional plays of a defenseman, and vice versa. It's kind of to that point now, and if you can do that, I mean, why wouldn't the coach put you out? You're the one that can handle it, versus players that are kind of pigeonholed into certain things. That's probably changed a little bit. Um, stride is probably the biggest, and the whole concept of how power or separation speed or that quick turnover rate concept has come into play. That's a little bit newer, but yeah, versatility and stride are the two things that I've seen evolve the most over time.
For any youth coaches listening, we hear a lot of terms like, speed, agility, quickness, balance. Like there's all these things, and sometimes it's like it's all in the same soup, and you're like, well, where do we start? What would you say are some of the foundational pieces or building blocks? Say like when kids are at their formative years, like really focus on these aspects to build a good base.
Again, this is very progressional. So we can't get agility without getting a bunch of other things first. We can't learn power without balance and control first. So it is very progressional. The younger the kid is, take a 4-year-old learning how to skate and their jersey is down past their knees and they don't
Yeah.
know how to hold a stick and it's the cutest thing ever. You know, you're not going to focus on anything but balance, stability, control. Start on 2 feet, move to 1 foot. The next age level, let's go to U9. U9 kid, they should have some balance and control now. And so then you really start focusing on how do they work their blades to touch an edge, especially an outside edge, and learning that the blade actually does things very naturally for you if you let it. And so if the blade's going to glide and turn you naturally, then your focus should be on balancing and pushing. The next level would be understanding, you know, balance has to come before pushing. A lot of kids just want to start pushing, but without the balance, the subconscious brain doesn't let you push to your max ability. So if you're sitting there wobbling, we can't push the best way possible. If you're balanced and in a stable position, then you can actually start adding that sense of force. And then from there, it continues. You um, just building blocks, start layering things on top of each other. But it always comes down, the very first thing is always balance and control. And you move up to the whole agility side of it. Agility seems to be the last thing that comes into play.
Where have you found inspiration outside of the game, or outside of the game, or maybe outside of sports?
Oh, geez, I'm such a sports nut that it's hard to think of if there's
Okay, let's
anything
go with
outside of
sports
sport.
then.
No, I'm just kidding.
What other sports would you look at? Like, would you look at like I'll give you an example. Like I used to work a lot with defensemen. That was kind of my shtick. And so I got really turned on by how quarterbacks were taught to read their options and how their eyes worked in the same way a defenseman has to find an outlet. So anything like that for you?
No, to be honest, no, I think I'm maybe too obsessed with hockey and that sport itself. I mean, my other sport is baseball. I'll watch MLB all day, every day if I could. Um, but it's such a different game. I don't, maybe it does play into hockey. I'm not sure. I've never tried to look at it that way.
Who are the hockey coaches like development? Like who do you get like some FaceTime with and you can just talk shop with? Who have you spoken with, or who would you want to talk to and say, hey, pick their brain?
Uh, Cooper for sure. I'd love to pick his brain,
Yeah,
100%. St. Louis right now with what he's doing with
he's awesome.
the
Like his
Habs.
press, he is
Oh
so good. Yeah.
my gosh. I would love to sit in a room with him for an hour and just pick his brain.
You
That
know
would
what he
be
did
fun.
before he coached in the NHL? Coach kids.
Yeah, he
And I
coached
and I
kids.
and I hear him talk, and I'm like, that is a product of somebody that has coached kids and sort of kind of manage that a little bit. That's
It's
just
funny,
my
people ask me quite often, do you coach younger kids? Yeah, absolutely. And some people are like, "Well, why?" Because it's what keeps me on my toes. It's what keeps me creative. It keeps me sharp. It keeps me thinking. It keeps me evolving. Um, that's where like the work is really done. I encourage everyone, if they can coach all ages, do it. It makes you that much better.
Danielle. You're going to be in Edmonton, Alberta, from August 6th to 8th, presenting at TCS Live. You came last year and saw for yourself. Based on that, do you have any? We haven't really talked about this, but like as far as a topic goes, but have you put some thought into it, or what are we gonna see a showcase on the ice?
Yeah, you know what? I am open to presenting on anything that you think will add value to the coaches that are there. The one topic that I'm very passionate about is that whole explosive power acceleration type of idea and getting the concept of, not everything needs to be a grind during a push. That might be fun to reiterate to the coaches out there that may not be aware of that. I think backward skating was touched on last year. The one thing that my pros, I'll say this, pros who come to me like, hey, can you give me some tips and tricks and help me with, whatever. Day one is always starting about how the blade naturally works. And I don't know if you've had coaches do a presentation on this, but the blade naturally glides you. If you hit the right spot, I call it the sweet spot. So if you hit the right spot, you'll naturally start gliding forwards or backwards, depending on where the pressure of the sweet spot is. And if you touch an edge, you naturally start to turn. So a lot of people think you need to lean to turn, and I love proving them wrong. And I'll go skate and touch an edge, and all of a sudden I'm turning, but I'm not leaning. And they're all, whoa, she's turning, but not leaning. Again, there's a bunch of analogies that I use. There's also that side of it that my players have always found fascinating, that, oh my gosh, like Yager, he said to me, had I learned this 20 years ago, I would have been, or he said, had I learned this 20 years ago, I would have had a longer career in the NHL. That's what he said to me. And I looked at him like stumped, like, you have not had a long career in the NHL. You've had the longest career in the NHL. This is crazy. But he was baffled. He's like, I didn't know this existed. I didn't know that the blade did this for you. So that is one thing that fascinates people if they don't know that that's what happens. That would be fun to teach. So you let me know. I'm flexible.
Well, you know what no coach has ever said?
What?
I wish this player was less explosive. So that feels like a good place to start. I love the blade. I love the blade comment. I think if you have time between now and then, if we could create like a post on the coaches site where you explain that would be
sure.
Fascinating. Yeah. Fascinating. Danielle, thanks so much for doing this. It's been a blast, and can't wait to see you in Edmonton.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I can always talk hockey, so I appreciate the time.